Today on 10-Minute IT Jams, we are joined by Chris Cruz, who is the CIO of the public sector at Tanium. Tanium is the industry's first and only provider of converged endpoint management. It leads the paradigm shift in endpoint management by consolidating tools, connecting workflows, and bringing together people. Chris joins us today to tell us more about Tanium and what Tanium's solutions are for the trends of today. Thank you for coming along, Chris. Welcome to the Jam.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Tom.
Well, let's get straight into it. For a business that hasn't worked with Tanium before, what are your key products and offerings?
Well, I think, with Tanium, it's all about visibility, control, management, and remediation on a single platform. I think those are the key areas to sum it up in 7 words or less about what we do. We do so much from a complexity perspective that I try to simplify our service offering and align with, I think, the priorities of our customers at hand. And so some of those areas that we can expand upon in is really around providing risk-based management control, patching of efficacy, looking at vulnerability management across your organization, and really doing so in real-time data. And real-time data is very important today, especially when you're making key decisions on cybersecurity issues, risks, and breaches that happen almost minute-by-minute basis across the globe today. So it's very important that you have those type of capabilities that also provide API automation and configuration to your other point solution tools, so you can bring that data up immediately. One of the other key components about Tanium that I think is very worth noting is our asset management capability, the ability to identify all assets that are plugged into the network, the ability to address third-party patching, as I talked about with Linux, MacBooks, Internet of Things, and other critical capabilities today that not a lot of folks are able to do in your environment to really increase your patch efficacy to a rate that today should be 98, 99% with everything that goes on. And today, Tom, as we live in this, what I call hybrid work environment, the attack vectors even become more complex in terms of how we manage, instigate, and implement breaches. So having a tool like Tanium as a single platform solution that mitigates risks, that drives and addresses transparency across the entire evolution of the entire organization is very seamless today.
Now, what are your most recent improvements or innovations in your offerings?
Yeah, so we've done a lot around SBOM, which is software bill of materials, of really giving technical people the detail around when they triage and manage and identify risk and issues, of providing that level of detail on how to mitigate those issues appropriately and provide what I call a documentation trail. That's so important today that you have that necessary capability. So that's an additional enhancement that Tanium's come up with. But I think for executives, Tom, it's really about dashboarding capability and having visibility and management, but understanding what your risk threshold capability is and level of maturity in today's environment. And Tanium provides that levels based on vulnerability management, patch management, asset management, and pulls that data really from the endpoint of your network to address all of that in real time. And having those key decisions and information to make key decisions and having a capable governance structure allows you to maintain and manage your cyber hygiene in an appropriate manner and lower your risk threshold. And I think these are areas that are really important today. You need to measure what gets managed, and having that appropriate control, having integration abilities and automation into a world today where we have a lot of manually, duplicate processes is really important in measuring, managing, and keeping a proactive way to ensure that your risk threshold remains low. And those are key areas I think that we have within our area, is bringing all of that data and bringing it into real time to make key decisions. Because one of the areas that we see a lot, Tom, now is resources lacking. We don't have the expertise, especially in government, to manage all of the solutions that we have. We don't have the expertise to monitor and manage, security operations centers, to provide the proliferation of data. And having a tool like Tanium that has those automation capabilities to provide that information in a matter of seconds without those manually duplicative processes is really key to preventing cybersecurity attacks, addressing ransomware attacks, and other abnormalities that happen within your environment.
Now, what can APAC and Australia learn from the US when it comes to cybersecurity and governance?
I think the biggest issue is having a level of standardization across your entire framework, and also ensuring that you have a key incident response and a level of risk management, and that you're sharing and have a common data repository for information on data breaches, on incidents, on how you go about addressing and mitigating those. This is increasingly important in the US. And the Biden administration released an executive order not too long ago that aligned with those particular processes, that said that you need to have good patch solutions in place. You need to have vulnerability management in place. You need to have threat response and management and controls in place to not only identify, but remediate as appropriately to keep these issues or breaches from spreading to the entire network. So what I would call is really best practices and lessons learned, and having good IT cyber hygiene practices is increasingly important. And these are the areas where the Biden administration is really focused on. And then keeping a single repository, again, of all those incidents, all of the management and issues. So if it comes up in one organization, you know how to address it in another and keep it from spreading. That centralized repository is now maintained by NIST, which is our Information Systems Directory in the Department of Homeland Security. And routinely, the Department of Homeland Security shares that information with our public sector actors here to ensure that there's a standardized approach to cybersecurity management, intelligence, and remediation here in the US. And I think that Australia could really benefit by those core processes and having a level of standardization across their entire security framework.
Now, what global trends are you seeing in the cybersecurity space?
Well, I think that the global issues that I'm seeing really is breaches, the ongoing events of AI proliferation, and the things that we're seeing now is really important and critical. Having a delivered oversight in terms of what those areas are, using common practices in terms of how we address things, zero trust, and having a bona fide zero trust architecture in place now with multi-factor authentication. Again, as the attack vector has increased with basically telework and virtual work, we have expanded the nature of our attack vector beyond the four walls of the building. And it's really important that we have preventative-based mechanisms up front to address and how can I say this, ensure that people have the necessary credentials and allocate appropriately into their respective networks. Those are areas that we're seeing commonly now. We're seeing common issues. We're seeing common incidents across the world. We're seeing hacking in the automotive industry now. It's become a big issue, and how you're preventing that. We're seeing hacking now on our mobile phones as the new attack vector, and specific areas of that where no one now is immune from these types of incidents, whether it be a ransomware attack, a DDoS attack, or controlled management attacks from your smartphone all the way to your laptop into your corporate headquarters building. The attack vector has spread. And it's up to us to provide a basic common framework to manage that in a proactive way if we're going to continue to remediate these issues at the highest level.
Now, following on from that, why is it important to integrate security and operations into a single program?
I think it's been becoming increasingly important that today the CIO and the CISO need to work together in what I call a collaborative partnership. And this goes back to, I think, common governance that you need to have across your organization. And having that in one platform is really the way to proceed and move forward. One platform allows you to get away from many single point solutions that often don't talk to each other, that don't have integration with each other, that we spend a lot of resources, time, money, and effort crunching data in one system and taking it to the next system and hoping that it addresses some point in time problem. But having a single platform with real-time data, with instant visibility of what's going on in your network, allows you to actionalize an execution plan much clearly. It allows you to develop a centralized repository for data development and management. It allows you to mitigate and share best practices and lessons learned across your entire ecosystem of your network and your organization. And it allows you to make single buy decisions with the CIO and CISO buying an enterprise solution rather than buying multiple point solutions and not in the left hand, not talking to the right hand. And this has been a big challenge that I've seen in government. Being a former CIO, we had the Baskin-Robbins approach to tool sprawl, where we had, how can I say this, 31 flavors of ice cream. We had 31 flavors of tools in our toolbox. And the left hand often didn't talk to the right hand. And the CISO made their own acquisition and buys without consulting with the operations manager in an approach. And it left us in a bad position where there was little ROI, high risk, and lack of management and monitoring of these multiplicity of tools. So having this single platform to consolidate and standardize on a single data point with vulnerabilities and management that terrests across the network, that we can be sharing common information on, we can make more intelligent decisions, reduce our risk threshold and risk score, and be proactively mitigating in managing risk response other than being reactive.
So what are organizations missing when it comes to addressing cybersecurity within their organization?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with education and training of their employees. I always say that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, and that you need to educate, train, and make your employees aware of what's out there, because a lot of this information and hacking and issues come through email and other forms of direct communication or social media to our employees. So having a variability of that, having an education and contingency plan in case there is a hack or some kind of breach that brings down your critical systems and critical business processes. What are you going to do to continue business operations appropriately? Ensuring really that you have a mechanism in place, that you have common incident response, you have a common governance plan with a framework for communication on how you're going to handle incident response and delivery. These are areas that are quite often overlooked by organizations. Do you have a cybersecurity strategy? And in that cybersecurity strategy, are there necessary priorities and objectives that align back with that communication piece of what those capabilities are? And not having a plan, not having a proactive mechanism and tools that will allow you to manage and measure and develop effective, as I could say, communication strategies is a big issue today. And first and lack of expertise behind the security organization and being able to identify, detect, manage, and remediate these types of issues. They're all commonalities that I'm seeing in government today. And there are areas that we need to address expediently if we're going to be successful in addressing cybersecurity initiatives across the globe.
Now, finally, if an enterprise end user wanted to engage with Tanium, what is the best way?
Well, Tanium has a great portal of knowledge and information on our Tanium website. And within that portal, there's information in terms of answering specific questions, going to specific needs or problems that you may arise. And then there's contacts in your respective areas. And we're very proactive in, how can I say this, nurturing and feeding when customers or new prospective customers have questions about Tanium to really define how we can meet their nature of their problem. And we take everything as a business problem and look at that transformation and innovation around that business problem, and then what Tanium can potentially do to address those problems expediently, but also provide you with an ROI and ensure you're making the best investment decisions when it comes to cybersecurity tools in a single platform like Tanium.
Well, it's been great to learn more about Tanium and what your thoughts are on the industry. It's been a pleasure having you on the Jam, Chris. We look forward to hearing more from Tanium in the near future.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Tom. Love to come back again. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.